Welcome to the Silver Mature WomanPreneur Podcast, a podcast for and by women over 50, providing faith-building strategies for female entrepreneurs looking to achieve higher levels of productivity, capacity, and growth, where we strive to focus on God's agenda while building our businesses to serve our community with excellence. Welcome to the podcast. The thing. So thank you so much for joining me. So a little bit, just for the sake of those that's going to be listening to the podcast, a little background on Chris is that she's a mom, she's a Christian, she's a writer, a storyteller, and a mountain dweller. Daughter. And I want to hear a little more about that. A mountain dweller, daughter, sister, friend. And Chris and I met, actually, it was probably like 2017, I think. We met at a retreat, Christian Entrepreneurs Retreat, retreat in Salt Lake City. And so I remember you were sitting there, and because none of us really knew each other. We were
right, the first one.
Yep. This was the first one. And so I remember you were sitting on the couch, and you were just kind of sitting there by yourself. And I was like, I'm going to go and talk to her. And so it was like you just kind of stood out to me, and I was like, I'm going to go and talk to her. And so I just came over there, and it was like when we started talking, it was like we already knew each other,
yes.
And it was so, it was, So that's how we met, and so I wanted to have you on so that, we can inspire those women who are, as they say in, I don't know, some people call it women of a certain age or whatever you want to call it. But baby boomers, I like to call us silver and maturepreneur. And for those of us who may not see Chris, she has beautiful silver hair.
Oh,
and
thank you. I got lucky.
And so it is so awesome to have you on here. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, like on your Facebook page, I wanted to ask you about this quote that you have on your Facebook page, because I went and snooping. I didn't know that I had never heard this quote before, but the quote is, and it seemed to him that as in his dream in the house of Bombadil, the gray rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise. And that was so beautiful. And I see that as JRR Tolkien.
Yes, Tolkien. Indeed. Okay. He is the author of The Lord of the Rings.
Got it. See, I didn't know that.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, Tolkien, he's so brilliant anyway. And, of course, the Lord of the Rings has been a huge, huge impact on culture, certainly through the books, which are still one of the best-selling books ever, every year, year upon year, and, of course, the movies. Love the movies, but in the books, which is it's actually one monster, huge book that is probably my favorite quote. And the background of that is that Tolkien was a devout Christian. He was Catholic, but a devout believer. So when you know that, then you can start seeing all of the Christian allegories and metaphors that were, in fact, in the book. And we know, because who Tolkien was, that Gandalf, his wizard character, was talking about Tolkien's conception and vision of heaven. So I love, love, love that quote.
Wow, that is really interesting, because I could see that there was a, Christian type of, underlying theme there, and so, but I never watched the movie, so no particular reason. I just never watched the movie, but and so that's why I'm not familiar with it. But that is, when I saw that, I was like, wow, that is her favorite. So that is her favorite quote. So that's why I wanted to ask you, like, wow, it was profound. I thought it was your quote at first.
Oh, I wish I could write like that. No. You know what though? That is the reason I love that quote so much. It's beautiful anyhow, is because that is exactly my conception of life, especially of Christian life. We are in a battle. We're in a battle for souls. We're in a battle for carrying out the meaning and purposes of our lives when we're saved. We're in the business of helping God to grow his kingdom so that as many people as may be saved will be saved, which is exactly what he said. Why are you waiting, the angel said, in the field of wheat and weeds? And he says, I want to bring as many to me as possible, as I have will to come before the end. So that's, but then the end, and I don't want anybody to be lost, and neither does God. I'll leave that to him. But at the end, for those of us who are saved, what will we be seeing through those opening gates, through the doors flinging wide, new heaven and the new earth? And we are rulers of it as well as his servants. It's just, to me, heaven informs earth. It doesn't replace it, because this is a short life, but it's an important one, because this is where people make the decision to be saved, and then once saved, make the decision to become more like Christ and obey God. That could not be more important.
Wow, you are absolutely right. And I just love how you articulated that. That was, it really illuminates your storytelling, giftedness. And so tell me, let's kind of move into a little bit of your writing, because I want to talk about, as we were talking earlier about your writing and what you're doing and things like that. So let's talk about your writing and your storytelling. And I do want to get to the Mountain Dweller part too. So tell me more.
Okay, you got it. On the books, all of my books are in fact Christian. It's just the way God has given me that to do, right? So they are divided into fiction and nonfiction. Now, the nonfiction, the Christian nonfiction, there are two. And the first one is The Devil Came Down to Chinatown. And that is a true story, of course. It's nonfiction. In the late 1800s, after the black slaves were freed and still living, it was a very, very difficult life, but they were freed people by then. And into the early 1900s, there was a population group that had never been legally enslaved, because by then slavery was illegal in the United States. But what was happening was that the Chinese, both from mainland China and Hong Kong, were coming in droves, mostly men, to be miners, right? And after that, after the gold mines started running out along the West Coast, then they came to work on the railroads. Now, this is all pretty well-known history. What happened, however, that we don't hear as much because it's shameful, were the women. Now, so the women were primarily trafficked in. These were peasant women who were told that, and they go to the United States, and there will be respectable husbands waiting for them there. Well, there weren't any husbands, respectable or otherwise. What was waiting there were barred and locked brothels. These women were trafficked from San Diego to Los Angeles to San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver. Most of them lasted 2 to 4 years. They had children. The children raised in the brothels, you can imagine what happened to them. It was pure on slavery, and it was horrific. Now, there were missions for the Chinese men. And I want to make it really clear that now in 2021, we'd look back at some of the white church members' beliefs about Chinese refugees, and we'd be like, whoa, because they were coming from such a place, the whites were, coming from such a place of white superiority. But that was cultural. Within their culture, within what they didn't know was wrong, they did what was right, in that they knew these were people, the Chinese, that desperately needed help, and they did their best to help them, and they accomplished a lot. But no one was working with the Chinese women because they were mostly prostitutes. And nice white Christians did not help prostitutes, right? But God really spoke to women and primarily the Presbyterian and the Methodist Episcopal denominations, which would later become the United Methodists. And they began, these women with very little male help, began to build missions in the Chinatowns of these cities. The two biggest missions with the most impact were in San Francisco. And what they did is they ended up rescuing these prostitutes and their children as the next 20 years passed by. The women, the American women who were doing the rescuing, actually started going into the back alleys of Chinatown with axes and with the few policemen that they could actually find, and split the doors down, and they knew what the hidden rooms looked like, and they took walls down, and these respectable middle-class Christian women were getting the Chinese girls and their kids out. And meanwhile, the Tong gets involved, the terrible triad, the Christian gangs, because they were, of course, trafficking the women, and there were fights in the street. And then the women went to work in the courts to see who the friendly judges were and to expose the judges that were on the Tong's payroll. And then ended up in 1906 with the Great San Francisco earthquake, which, of course, destroyed, by shaking and burning a liquefaction, a huge amount of San Francisco. Both of the missions were destroyed. They were shaken down and burned. The women led out the Chinese, many of whom were very young, right? That very few older women, they died by then, led out their Chinese women and children. There were about 50 in each group, two different missions. Both groups made it through a burning, destroyed city to safety. Not a single woman or child or baby was injured. Talk about the hand of God. Both missions are actually there today. They were rebuilt. One is the Donaldina, I just forgot her name. Anyway, the Presbyterian mission is still a Presbyterian mission, and the Methodist one is still a Methodist one. And both of them now are active in education, in evangelism, in social change and justice for the Chinese populations of San Francisco's Chinatown. Boy, it took a long time to explain that, and that's just one book. But anyway, and that's still what I do. Even with the nonfiction, it's stories. It's true stories.
Yeah, and I mean, that is so fascinating. And, we're probably going to have to do a totally different podcast, to get, to dive into all of this. But
or maybe 4 or 5. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, and I don't need to, tell you the rest of my thousands of books. But that's the kind of thing I do. And even in the fiction books, which, funnily enough, because I think I'm hilarious, they are actually supernatural thrillers with monsters set in the 1920s. They're still Christian. They have a sense of humor. So the audiences don't necessarily cross over, even though it's Christian fiction. But didn't I tell you that life is a battleground? Much of it's blessed, some of it's funny, some of it's life and death.
Yeah.
But, I don't actually believe that there were Wendigo and, werewolves and militant ghosts running around the world. But I absolutely believe there are demons. And absolutely, we're stronger than they are in Christ, but we're going to need them sometimes, whether we recognize them or not.
Yeah.
That stuff is real.
Yeah. So how many books have you written, by the way? I don't think I ever
5.
Well, since I've known you.
Yeah, 5.5. The half actually formed the core of the 5th full-length book, so 5 full-length books. The 2 nonfiction, The Devil Came Down to Chinatown, which I just talked about, and my most recent book of all was one of the nonfictions, and that is Open the Floodgates, The Transforming Power of Christian Image and Prayer, which is where, as you know, Aldreama, where I teach how to listen to the Holy Spirit and allow him to meet you in your imagination, subject to the framework of the Bible. And the 3 fiction ones are, let me see here, they're a series, The Crowned Serpent and Dark Border and The Shadow Eaters, and I'm in the middle of the 4th one now, which is called Cold Harvest. And they all take place in the 1920s with a Christian heroine who just is beyond irritated at the fact that monsters keep coming in her life, and she just doesn't like it, but she's got to do it anyway. I love her.
Right. Right. Now here's my question. So what are your plans to do with your books? Are you plan to just, do that, or is this going to be, screenwriting? Are they going to turn into movies, or what's the next step?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will, as long as I've got my brain, keep writing books, all right, because I love it. It's a huge accomplishment for me personally. I haven't marketed on that much because in all the years of working for myself, and I've been working for myself for 20 years, I'm not great at marketing. I tend to avoid it. So I need to do more just to get the books out. But, I want them to sell. We're talking about the fiction now. I want them to sell, and I want people to start enjoying the series. What is happening now is very, very similar to most new writers of fiction, because I've only written fiction in the last 3 or 4 years. And they'll get out more as I write more series and do more. Now, for the nonfiction books, I would like those, especially the new one, which is Open the Floodgates, because that's teaching. I would like those to help to fuel it's my business. I tend to call it my ministry because, as you know, I'm still a copywriter, and so I do have that business. But here's the plan. The 2 things that I've been doing for Christian ministry for a long, long time is writing and teaching. Now, that's teaching weekly Bible studies. It's also teaching online. It's presenting courses. And speaking. I do some platform speaking, and that's fun. But most of what I do when I do speak in front of an audience, which of course didn't happen during the shutdown, is my 1-act plays that I wrote.
Talk about that.
Yeah, and one, for example, probably my most popular one because I'm Methodist, is Susanna Wesley. So John Wesley's mother, John was the father of Methodism, and he said, in the quote, after his mother passed away, that I learned more about Christianity and God from my mother than any theologian. So she's wonderful. She's absolute kick. She wasn't perhaps the easiest person to get along with because Susanna, if she knew what you were supposed to do, and she usually did, she would tell you in exhaustive detail. Yet at the same time, she was an 18th century wife, properly submissive, and she meant to be submissive, and she thought she was, but yeah. Anyway, it'd be very funny and very touching because also through Susanna, in fact, the second part of the play which is a monologue, is her talking about her sons John and Charles, who went to the United States, and their extreme failure there. It was a horrible, stinking mess of a failure. And then coming back to England, Charles was not as affected. John was deeply depressed. And just wandering the streets one night, he never said if he was planning on ending it all. He probably wasn't, going to do that, but he was certainly in a terrible depression. And he came across a sign for a mixed English and German speaking faith meeting, and he just kind of wandered in, and that ended up becoming what's called the Aldersgate experience, where John he was a Christian. He loved God with all his heart, but he received the power of the Holy Spirit in a way he never had before. And he said later, describing it, that his heart my heart was strangely warmed, is the quote. Now, before I knew any of this, I didn't know any of this. I wasn't Methodist at the time. I was Presbyterian. And I was going through a terrible time. I've been divorced twice, right? Really fabulous background. And I think my son was born. Yeah, my son was born. But so we were going through at the same time, my at the time husband and I, he was my second husband, a separation, later ended up in divorce, separation. We were having to sell the house before they foreclosed it, and a bankruptcy. And I was the only one who was working. It was terrible. And I remember I got very angry at God, and I was in my dining room, and I yelled at him, and I said, because we needed the money, I said, yours is the cattle on 1,000 hills. What skin is it off your nose to give us $5,000 for the mortgage? That's a direct quote. Now, I don't remember, right? Oh, I was so pissed off. Pardon my French. Because I was doing everything I could, right? And I don't honestly remember if it was that afternoon or if it was the next day, but it was within a day. I suddenly was still mad and trying to figure this out, mad at God. And I went up to my bedroom, and I loved my bedroom. I loved my house. That's part of how hard this all was. And I remember sitting down in my glider rocking chair. And suddenly, I just sort of emptied out. And I remember I opened my mouth and said, and I forgot that it was from Job at the time. I didn't even know where it came from. And I said, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And get this, my heart got so hot that I was worried about it.
Wow.
I did not know that John Wesley had gone through exactly the same thing 300 years earlier. Now, and I was okay. I wasn't happy, believe me, but I was all right. And God got us through everything. We separated and had to sell the house and declare bankruptcy. But, a year and a half later, speaking of mountain dweller, I was able to move to my dream community in Brightwood, California, start a ministry. And I never went to date again. I never did, but I've never been happier since then, and that's been almost 20 years.
Wow. I'm so glad you shared that story because I know you and I have talked a little bit about that, when we, spent some time together at the retreat and things like that. But I did not know, to that extent, what had happened. And so the reason I say that I'm so glad that you shared that is because sometimes, we may not admit it, but we do get mad at God about things, when it doesn't seem like things are going the way we had planned or, whatever, and it seems
That's right.
And I'm sure that there are people that maybe, listening to this, recording this podcast, so hopefully this will, encourage people who are going through certain things, who are, feeling like they're at the end of their rope, and they feel like
it does feel that way.
Gosh. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
but as Christians, especially I think as Christian women, I think we're like, I don't want to get mad at God. It's not His fault. Well, no, it's not His fault. But you're mad anyway, and you think you're fooling Him. You think He doesn't know.
That right.
Or are you going to surprise Him? Come on. Yeah. Oh, God goes, oh, sorry, Aldreama. I didn't know you were that mad. Why didn't you tell me? Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, we got to deal with the truth. Say, Lord, I know it's not your fault, but I feel like it is. I'm sorry. Whatever it takes.
Exactly, because He knows our heart. He knows.
Yes.
It's like just like your. Anyway, so I have another question for you. So, because you're a writer, and my husband is a writer. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, do you ever get writer's block? And if you do, what do you do about it? How do you get through it?
I don't anymore. I used to. And I am a perfectionist procrastinator. So you would think that if anyone ever got a block, it would be me. But what I learned is how I finally finished my first novel, which only took me like 30 years. Mostly it's sat on a computer, and I never lost the file all those years. And once I learned from that, I was able to apply to my nonfiction as well as my fiction. It's just, for me, make the skeleton. Know where you're going, even if it's crazy. Even if it ends up changing, it doesn't matter. You just have all the little points, you know where you're going, and you got the general shift, and then, ow, thank you so much. My Siamese just batted my ankle. Anyway, and once you have that, again, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, once you have the structure, then you can start hanging your stuff, and developing the paragraphs and the chapters and fleshing out the ideas. And then when you're able to do that once or twice, then you think, you know what? I'm going to trust this process. This works. If I just put all the stuff in here and have the most basic structure, most basic skeleton, then it's all going to come together. And as I'm actively writing, the plot's going to shape itself up, or in the nonfiction, the structure's going to suddenly make sense, and you just trust that it's going to work. Now, I pray over my stuff too, but this particular method, it just simply works because it gives the brain something to work for and the feeling of depth.
Absolutely, absolutely. So did you always know you were a writer, or, you know?
Yes, I did.
How did you know? Okay.
Well, because I write. It's what I do. I've always been able to write well and speak well. So, and I am, in fact, already a professional writer. I'm a business writer because, you know, that you can make money that way. And as I said, I supported my son both when I was married and then single, because I never got help from that quarter. And but I could always write. And so I used it, a lot of prayer, to make money. Because I came home and worked for myself in 2005. And although telecommuting was just starting, it wasn't very common yet, right? And I was like, my kid was 5 or 6, between 5 and 6, and I said, Lord, I don't want him to be in school, first grade, and then in daycare all day long, because I was driving 3 hours a day to get back and forth to my job as a paper, because I was a journalist at that time. And they were wonderful. They were lovely to work for. They loved Alex. But, you know, you kind of have to go to work. So, and I have to miss stuff. And I was like, So, Lord, please help me work from home. And I'll tell you what, he worked some miracles. He worked some miracles to get me home.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we're, you know, I wanted the listeners to get, you know, to really, and I know that they are getting a lot of nuggets, because you did share, you know, like your process for writing and things like that. So what are some other tips that you could, you know, share with us in terms of business, in terms of writing, you know, that, you know, to kind of encourage people who are in this industry, whether it's a coach. I know you don't like that word coach, but
I kind of don't, but I think I'm going to have to do it, because apparently I'm the only one who has problems with it.
Own up to it.
I love my coaches. I'm like, I got a coach. Yes, of course.
Right.
I think what might be helpful, let me talk a little bit about writing first. And the reason I say that, because a lot of people enjoy writing anyway, whether everyone wants to do it professionally, but a lot of people look to it and say, well, if I were a writer, maybe I could be home with my kids, you know, because that was my driver. People talk about having these great, fantastic motivations to want to be a writer. I can't stop the words, and I have to change the world. And, you know, God bless them if that's what it is. For me, it was I missed my son's kindergarten program, and I am really mad. You know, that was my great thing. But it was as a mom with her kid. And what a lot of people start out with, however, is writing cheap little articles, cheap little blogs, you know, for $20 a pop, or maybe no money at all. There are parts of the writing scene that will pay well. And I encourage people, especially moms and dads, or, you know, single people, whoever, who have a background in it paying industry. So they might have gotten their college or graduate degree. They may be working in tech or finance, healthcare, right? These are all industries that pay writers for writing. So don't think that you're just going to be poor, or that if somebody wants to give you $30 a blog, it's a really great deal. It's not. It's okay when you're starting off, but it ain't the place you want to be. And the second thing is, if then you want to instead, or then maybe later, once you perhaps have a business writing career established, that you want to start writing books, do it. If you can already put words together and make sense and structure a persuasive or educational piece, you can write books. I would get books to learn from, but you can learn that. You don't have to invest in expensive training. You just learn and then you do it, and it gets done. And again, this is from a perfectionist procrastinator of the first order. If I did it, because I had the talent, but I wasn't doing it, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how talented you are if you ain't doing it. So that's right. And on the speaking, now again, I've always been good with speaking, always did it in and out of business. And I want to speak. I want to speak more than I have been. Again, COVID got in the way, so I believe. Okay, I'm sorry. This is going to sound like I'm out of order here, but let me move forward a little bit. There are three parts now of my ministry. I still have my copywriting business, but I'm part-time at it by choice, right? So I'd have time to do the other. The Christian business that I hope to hang on to till I'm in the grave is writing, but books, especially writing books, speaking, and we'll say coaching because, I'm being ridiculous here, and coaching, spiritual Christian coaching. And the third piece, which is the newest piece for me, which is Christian coaching. I've actually been doing that for several years, but only with friends. As you know, Aldreama, in fact, you have an open invitation to let me pray with you. Anytime you want, I'm there for you.
I can't wait.
Well, good. I'm telling you, just let me know it's time. I'm saying great. Anyway, that's what I do is I mentor people through listening prayer. But I didn't charge for it until just very recently, because I felt really funny about it. Then God told me the laborers were their hire. But really, I'm just starting to build up that side of the business. I believe that as I start working with more individuals and groups, that the speaking opportunities will come naturally, organically, right out of that.
Yeah.
So I think those are very, very closely tied together.
Absolutely. I, when I talk to people, it's like one thing just it kind of feeds into the other. It's
yes,
and it's not. Some people try to compartmentalize things, but it's like one thing feeds into the other. And I believe that the way God created us, He wants us to use what we have, but it's also how He. From one assignment to the other, they still feed each other, if that makes sense.
Yes. Well said.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And everything in Christ, if we're following, is organic and holistic, and it's all in the will. But these things are things that we can see from the beginning are deeply connected. And it's just there. It's perfectly obvious. Yeah.
Is there anything that you do not like about your business?
Well, I'm not making any money off the ministry, so it's fortunate that I'm not relying on it. Because I've got, as I said, I still, even part-time copywriting, you can do well. And with my retirement, because I officially retired a couple years ago, financially I'm okay. I am praying, because I'm so bad at marketing, I decided to go with a very well-known and very brilliant and very Christian coach, which coaches people like me, Christian entrepreneurs specifically, on breaking into some much higher income levels. And believe you me, this is more money I've ever spent on anything except the down payment of a car. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because I'm a little cheap. I got to tell you, I'm a little cheap. And God was saying yes. I'm going, are you sure? I mean, I really asked God if He was sure about this. And He's got like, yes. I did. So what I'm hoping and praying and believing is that around September, October, more income would start to come in. And really, even a part-time income is fine because that'll transition and grow. But yes, I would like to be making more money so I can not only live as I can already, but pay off debt because I do have IRS debt. I made some big fat tax mistakes as a freelancer, which I'm fixing, but there it is. And yeah, that'd be good. But I enjoy the work immensely, and I have to tell you, Aldreama, I don't like work. I don't like working. And people are like, work is my bliss. And I'm like, shut up. I don't believe you. Because I don't love the process. It's true. I don't love the process of anything. Doesn't matter what it is. I like the goal. I'm goal-oriented, and I'll do it, but I do not like getting there, right?
I love it.
It's true. Oh, it's so true.
So for the sake of the listener, so how can people connect with you, whether it's social media or what have you, and is there some, something that you want to offer the listeners or what have you? What you got?
Sure. I'm trying to think what the best way is. Now, you know what I'll do, if it's okay with you, Aldreama, is let me email you just probably just a couple of links because I don't want to overwhelm people with a whole bunch. But I can email. Sorry, I'm walking around because I'm all excited, so now I'm out of breath in our altitude. I can send you the link to the website, which has a ton of stuff on it. This is the ministry website. And I will email you, along with it, my Calendly link, which I know you have as well, or you have a similar service, where I am more than happy to get on the line with people who are seeking a way to go deeper with God, to hear Him more clearly, and to know what He wants, to receive healing. I mean, just the amazing things in deep Christian prayer that are available, but not everyone knows, even though the Bible says it. Jesus makes all sorts of promises about prayer, but we don't always know how that's supposed to come out. Anyway, so the website, which will give them a good idea about the things that I do, and they can join the newsletter if they want to, where I share videos and articles and blogs and announcements about the upcoming courses, and the appointment link itself, because we'll be so happy to talk to people.
Yeah. So you have some courses as well, right?
Well, yes. Now, I have a course. I actually pulled it because it was my very first one, and I wasn't that happy with the audio. But I am redoing it bigger and better right now. Yeah. So I'm going to have a coaching program launching in September or October. And I don't know what it is yet. I'm ready to film. I'm ready to make it. I'm like, Lord, maybe you should tell me what I'm supposed to do it on. And Aldreama, I'll talk to you later about this, just you and me. But this particular talk has actually been instrumental in helping me decide what it's supposed to be. So thank you. God is using you in a big way for me. And And then, as I said, I'm refilming the course that I already did and I'm redoing on the fall of Jericho, and using that true Bible story as a prayer guide for deliverance from wicked strongholds in people's lives. Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
Wow. That is so awesome. Well, I know, I'm so excited that, well, first of all, I'm always excited to talk to you. And I'm sorry that we have not talked as often as we should, but
I know.
I'm so excited that we were able to reconnect and
Me too.
And talk about what you're doing, kind of catch up on things, and it's just always so awesome to talk to you. I remember when we sat down in this, because there were two retreats, and the second time, I sat down with you was really a time when I really connected on a deeper level with you. And so I just so appreciate you, for who you are, who God has called you to be, what he's called you to, do in the world and the impact. And so it was a very, very impactful conversation, that we had. And so I just wanted to thank you for that. And I will never, ever forget it. It was, very, very helpful and impactful in my life. So I don't know if I had a chance to tell you that, but yeah.
I knew it. I knew it because I recognized the power of God. There was, and I will say nothing personal at all, but I remember that very clearly, that you were going through some big decisions. You weren't sure what you wanted to do. And here's the thing with you, Aldreama. You're really smart and really gracious and kind and funny. You're also dignified. And when you don't want to talk about something, you ain't got to talk about it. And nobody's going to pull that out of you at all. And you will be really honest about it. You were kind. But I was like, how are you? Well, I'm going through some stuff. I'm not very ready to talk about it. I was like, cool. Okay. Right. I didn't try to get you to do it. I'm not one going to make you mad. And and then I went off, and God said, it's this. And like you've said, I am not by nature insightful into other people. I'm really not. And God said, it's that. It's okay to say. And I went back and said, is it this? I was so afraid you were going to be mad at me. And you were like, yeah.
That's what it is, yeah.
And then we were able to pray about it, right? But I'll never forget that. And I felt a little dumb. I was like, man, I hope I heard God right.
Oh, my gosh. It's just, oh, my gosh. What a great, great conversation. I so enjoy this. And I really hate to get off.
Thank you. I know, right? Keep going. Well, thank you. And like I said, and I'll tell you the details of it later. But once I get a couple more decisions made in the next couple of days. But seriously, honey, this talk has helped me answer a huge question that I'm asking God about. It's where to take the coaching, right? Where to take the courses and where to take the teaching. And I know that this is a time I need to go through so I can listen to him more deeply. But, just our talk right here in these 45 minutes or so has been extremely helpful and very, 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 very blessed. So I appreciate that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yep. Hi, this is Aldreama Harper, and thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope you got value for where you are in your entrepreneurial endeavor. And if you'd like to know more about how I can further serve you, simply go to CoachDreama.com. Again, that's CoachDreama.com. I look forward to hearing from you. Have an amazing day.